I wanted to start, and it's interesting that we discuss values, because I wanted to start at that point. Local Government Association meets annually every year. Chief executives, leaders, we come together to look at what's facing, the issues facing the sector. This year, the conference was in Manchester. Next conference is going to be in Bournemouth. Within the conference, there's a session put aside just for the chief executives to get together without the politicians and to look at what faces us as chief executives. What do you think would have been the theme that we would have focused on this year?
Shortage of funds.
Shortage of funds. Right. Is expressed as trust. So Martin Reeves, the chief executive of Coventry, his argument was fundamentally the biggest challenge we face as chief executives in local authorities today is trust. Because we are, at the moment, very well trusted by our community. 79% of our public trust local authorities. The figure for central government is 11%. 11. Right? But in the context of the funding pressures, everybody understands that fundamentally that trust could break down if we don't handle this process the right way. Our communities take for granted so much and simply don't understand the pressure we're facing across the sectors. And that is manifest to me day in, day out when I speak to businesses and when I'm interviewed by the radios and I'm interviewed by the press or radio on a weekly basis, and absolutely it's not understood, the scale of what we're facing in this room. So fundamentally, trust is a big issue, and that means having to work across the sectors to understand what are we going to do to make sure that the city continues to be a strong city, in our particular case, in spite of the significant financial pressures. And the local government sector has had an agenda for some time. It's put out in a document called Rewiring Public Services, and it basically presents to government and to all the political parties the agenda for a different settlement for local government that recognises that we are capable of driving an agenda and sets out the fundamental problem we are facing, which is a £2 billion a year gap in public sector finances. And that gap is generated by increasing demand on an annual basis, not least because of the one priority that there was identified at the top, which is looking after the elderly, the pressures on looking at adult care, and what it's doing to our funding. So we have a gap in public sector finances, and that gap is growing, and therefore we need to do something differently. Now, in the context of the city, our grant from government in 2010-11 would have been 10.6 million a year. In 2017-18, we predict it will be just over 5 million. We anticipate the reduction in our grant will have reduced by 52% in that period. So we have an issue we have to address. How do we continue to deliver services? How do we continue to support the city with less funding? And we know that means we can't do the things that we've done in the past. We have to do it differently. So the message that was said, we have to find a different way of doing things. No doubt, one of the things is how do we deal with demand and how do we manage demand down better? And what that tells us, and the City Council is absolutely clear about this, it means our relationship with our partners have to be different. Because managing demand and the problems that individuals face requires work across the sectors. It requires work across the sectors and vertically between the county council and ourselves, as well as the health authorities and others. So a different way of working might give us an opportunity to tackle demand and manage down demand such that we are helped in our finances. So some of the practical things that we're looking at as a city now to address some of the issues that was raised earlier. Firstly, many local authorities will be looking at their asset base. They will be looking at how do we deliver services with our assets and reduce the financial cost to the local authority, but at the same time, still delivering services. And many authorities have said they believe fundamentally that requires a different relationship with our communities, so that our communities take greater ownership of our assets. Those assets can be community buildings, it can be public parks, it can be spaces. We touched on earlier about the co-production and co-design of services. But there is no doubt there is a way of empowering our communities to have a greater role in managing the affairs that are affecting them, and in the process, hopefully delivering services that they want and reducing the cost to the local authority. Now, what we recognise is in supporting that capacity, it isn't very helpful if we simply withdraw funding like that. So I think we recognise that we as an authority have to do work with our communities to build capacity to allow our communities to take on a greater role. And there are some practical considerations that we recognise each community will face in that conversation about do they have a greater role with their assets. So that's something that we're working on, and Dawn, many of you know Dawn and our Assistant Director Sarah Ward is looking at now, which is what do we need to do with our communities to put them in a position where they're able to take on a greater role in our community, managing their assets. That will help us reduce our costs, but equally empower our community to hopefully be more effective in the future by having a greater role themselves. We also recognise that there is an untapped potential within our community that could play a greater role in supporting our communities in this task. That is the private sector and the role that business can play in supporting communities. And we have a lot of great examples, and the speaker you're going to hear after me is a great advocate and does it as a company in terms of corporate social responsibility and the work done with communities to help them play a role. And there's a lot of work going on, but we know we can do better. And we know there is an issue about how do we make it easier for business to support our communities. So one of the roles that we could explore is what can the local authorities and the other sectors do to make it easier for business if they wish to support communities and to support activities in their own city. The one thing that you won't know, I'll tell you, as the Director for Growth, is the number of companies that come to me because they want to make this city a stronger city. They want to do something because they live here and they've chosen to come here. And what they want to do is play a part. And they want to know how do they play a part. They're not doing it necessarily for a commercial return. They just love the place, passionate about the place, and want us to help them play a role. And Martha will know, because of the work that happens with you and your foundation, that there are a lot of benefactors out there who could be encouraged to play even a greater role in making our city a stronger city. So, as a local authority, we've got a job to do. In the past, it would have been very much, how do we, or rather, the question would be, how can we help you? And I think what we've realised, and I think it's where the agenda is going, is the role we will play is how can we help you help yourselves, which is a very different conversation and requires a local authority to have a very different ethos about the way it delivers its services. It won't be simply a question of the City Council delivering services. Our role is going to be greater than that, and it's to help facilitate you also deliver with us on behalf of our community. Our mission statement as a council has been consistent over a decade, and it's very clear, our relationship to partnership. It says, we will enhance Exeter as a regional capital, working with our partners to improve the quality of life for those who live, work and visit the city. Partnership is a fundamental way we believe we deliver for our city. Question going forward is we've never faced the scale of challenge we are facing and will face over the next 3 to 4 years. So the one thing I would put on the table today is the pace at which we need to change has to be kicked up. Because we've had a bit of track that we've been going down where we thought we could manage the transition, and I can see we're going to be running out of track very quickly, hence why the chief executives at the last annual conference were saying, do you realise that you are fundamentally going to be in a different place when it comes to trust? And if you don't sort it as the people who are running the organisations, the head pay the service, you will fundamentally lose that trust quality that you've enjoyed for so long. Because it's going to hit so quick, the public. But we have got an opportunity now to do something about it. So we can't let this period go. I think it will be a great opportunity missed if we lose this short-term opportunity to manage the model of doing things differently. So that's one thing I want to leave you with. We've got to pick up the pace now to manage this transition. And I had something important to say to you, and it's gone from my mind. And it was to do, I'm sure it was to do with the message. Sorry, not very eloquent of me, but there was a point I wanted to make, and I forgot.
Well, there's plenty of opportunity to make points later anyway, so thanks.
So we basically, we're in a position where I'm here. It's not just a case of coming to turn it up, it's an important demonstration of the commitment of our organisation to work with the community groups across the sectors to make this change happen. We're committed to doing it. We recognise we haven't got much time to get things put in place, so we're here to help facilitate that conversation, and we're going to play our part.
Thanks.